up, y'all? You're listening to the Extra Point College Football Podcast. I'm your host, Jacob Carnes, joined as always by my co-host, Daniel Hammock. Daniel, I'm a little under the weather. I'm going to try to get through with my voice on this podcast. We're going to make it. Hey, some teams had to finish games this week, and man, we're going to finish this podcast.
Is this like the flu game for you?
Flu game, cold game,
Yeah.
upper respiratory infection, if you want to get real in the weeds. If you want to sound really cool and you have a cold, just say you have an upper respiratory infection. Yeah, that's the medical term for it.
Well, I'll be Pippin. I'll carry you off the court and give you some Gatorade. Okay.
I appreciate it. I'm gonna need it. I got my water. Got a lozenge, a little Ricola.
Ricola, yeah.
Shout if you want to sponsor us, be sure. Contact us. You can reach out. Our emails on our show link. Anyway, Daniel, we have a lot of games to talk about. I did want to shout out 18 of you participating in our Run Your Pool picks.
Yes.
And all the games are complete. Man, I ended up with 2 points. Here's the thing. I talked a big game. 2 weeks ago, went 6-1. Bragged about it. I've had to swallow my pride last 2 weeks. 2-5 back-to-back weeks. So it's sad. You tied for first out of our entire picks pool. 4-3, great week. That was the best week out of anyone. And Garrison, shout out, and then Addie, my wife, shout out, and she actually won the tiebreaker with total points scored in NC State Clemson. So yeah, all went 4-3. Great week. Good news is total points for Run Your Pool is just based on total number of wins. So if you didn't join this week, you're only down 4 wins. So you can get that. You can make that up in 1 week. You can win 7 games.
It's easy.
And take the lead, 7-0. So you're not that far behind. Don't worry. Be sure to join. You can click the link in our show notes down below, on our social media at the Extra Point Pod, on Facebook and Instagram to join us there. Daniel, let's start with, we just had some games wrap up. How about Clemson, NC State? Clemson 30, NC State 20. What are your thoughts on this game?
I think that Clemson asserted itself early. They were kind of it's one of these where their defense controlled the game and it allowed their offense time to put the points up that they needed. So I was impressed with really that's really what it comes down to. I was impressed with the defense to kind of bounce back after that week against Wake Forest, where we're kind of thinking, hey, are they as good? And they kind of came in, surrounded Devin Leary, and that offense kind of kept them at bay. And, which is what I predicted would happen with it being a 6.5 point spread. I felt like Clemson would at least win by a touchdown. And I think, did I say that they would win by? I feel like if we go back to the tape, I said something about them winning by like 3 scores, but that may have been somebody else.
No,
so
you said that.
I'm just throwing it out there that I did feel I had a good feel on this game. So I think that just, it being, at night, in Death Valley, Clemson had a lot going for them. Obviously the hurricane had less, effect on games that we may have thought just in general. But yeah, just looking at this 30-20, they were, at one point the 30-13 at the end of the game, NC State scores late. They really made Devin Leary more pedestrian than anything, holding the whole team to 34 rushing yards. That's really what it came down to. It's just that line of scrimmage. Clemson able to just, assert itself and did just enough on offense to make this a convincing win.
Our good friend Josh Pate, Padlock Stats, I think he talks about NC State, 34 rushing yards. Yeah, that defensive line asserted itself. And I think this says a lot about Wake Forest. Let's go ahead and mention that game too. Wake Forest defeats FSU on the road. You and I both took Wake Forest the points, but I think the difference in NC State and Wake Forest is I think Wake Forest probably has the best receiving core in the ACC. And so they were able to challenge Clemson on the outside.
Right.
And without a run game tonight, with Clemson's defensive line doing what we thought they could, they pretty much shut down NC State's offense. They had a couple big plays break, but this defensive line did what they needed to. So I know it's 30-20, pretty dominant win for Clemson at home. So Clemson is getting better every week. And again, this is a team that's growing. Teams are not complete in week one. So I think we're seeing a different version of Clemson than we saw early on in the season, and that is good for Clemson. Let's mention Wake Forest, Florida State, Daniel, and because I just mentioned it. I think the receivers were a big difference maker in this game against Florida State. But Wake Forest actually able to run the ball pretty well against Florida State as well. But they were just the better team all game. Like I don't have a lot to say other than they were the better team all game. This offense is fun to watch for Wake Forest. Some receiver made some very good catches. That fade to the right that Hartman threw at the goal line. I'm missing who caught the touchdown now.
Harry.
Yes. Wait.
And then Green.
Yes. Anyway, phenomenal catches from the receivers today, and a great win on the road as Wake Forest, the second best team in the ACC.
I think we're kind of getting to that place because that's kind of what these games were meant for today. It was a pseudo, ACC playoff, if you will, with Clemson and NC State, and then Florida State and Wake Forest playing. And so Florida State, they've had a good run so far. I think that they're still a great, really like a solid team that's developing over the course of the year. Norvell is kind of doing what he needs to do. You just really have to look at it in a vacuum. This game, Wake Forest, this Dave Clawson offense, like you said, is very fun to watch. They have that slow mesh with the running game. I think it really freezes a lot of linebackers, and then they like to throw these crossing routes that get these receivers open. And then, just when you're looking at everything underneath, they hit you over the top with something big. You need a quarterback who can, as Jameis Winston would say, toss that thing. And Sam Hartman can definitely do that. So the longer you're with Dave Clawson, I feel like the better you're going to be. This offense, the ball rarely hits the ground. I feel like he's just got complete command of the offense when you watch it. And the defense has gotten better. They just need to be situationally there, basically hold serve on occasion, because they're going to get a better opportunity because offenses are going to try to be aggressive against them because they're going to be trying to keep up with that Wake offense. So on games like this where it's light competition, when Wake's playing Clemson's got more talent, so Wake's really having to overcompensate for that. Whereas in this game, Wake, they could kind of take it as it comes because I think they're on an even athletic scale with Florida State. And so I think that they can win these games based on their scheme and the pressure it puts on the other team. So I thought it was a great game. This was on my second screen the whole game. Wanting to just see, first of all, I wanted to get the pick right because I felt like Wake was going to be, they got +6.5. So I felt like the wrong team was favored, but good for them. Good for, Sam Hartman after kind of having a rough start to the year with, not being cleared medically. And then now he's able to be cleared, and it looks like Wake is kind of taking off. And yeah, they're up there. I'm trying to think of, I think they're better than NC State. I think they're better. I mean, they're obviously better than Florida State. And then, yeah, they're better than Middle Tennessee State. So I think that they are doing just fine. Now, I don't know if they're better than, Georgia Tech now that they've got a new head coach. We'll at least mention that, shout out to Georgia Tech, new head coach, Brent Key, interim head coach, going on the road and beating Pittsburgh. So first game without Jeff Collins, and they go win a road ACC game against a ranked opponent. So how about that?
Who saw that one coming? Not me.
I didn't.
Another late game. Mentioned Georgia Tech. Got to talk about the Dogs. Number 1 Georgia narrowly escapes Missouri. Took their first lead of the game with 4 minutes to go in the game. So 26-22. you and I do some picks outside of the picks for the podcast, and I think you and I both had Georgia as a best bet, as like a lay the 28, especially coming off of the Kent State game, as that
Right.
being a game that like, hey, this is a get right game for Georgia. Man, they struggled, and the most surprising thing to me was how they looked on both sides of the line of scrimmage, especially in the first half. I think they woke up a little bit in the second half, but Missouri was just blowing off the ball. It wasn't anything scheme wise. It was just they were just getting a push up front. So I think this raised a lot of question marks for me for Georgia moving forward. Because if Missouri and Kent State can hang, like you can't convince me yet they're on a tier by them. Like they're on that top tier and untouchable. Like after
Right.
having back
Right.
to back performances like this. And we talked about the Clemson teams that early on in the season, like, okay, they're not complete yet. They're getting better and better and better. For Georgia, it appears they've regressed. So, and what were your takeaways from this game?
Yeah, it's tough because for me, it's tough to grade games when they're on the road the same, just because going on the road, it can mean different things as the momentum goes. So, like you look at Georgia's game against South Carolina, they come out and they score right away, and then they score again, they score again. Their first three possessions, they're up by 3 touchdowns. Um, at that point, it was like, okay, the road has essentially been neutralized. They don't have to worry about it. This, it's colder weather. It's a night game. Georgia struggled to those first 3 possessions where I think it was um, they 3 and out, and then a fumble. So those back-to-back 3 possessions, I think set the tone for the whole game, because I do think that there was a change and Georgia was able to move the ball, but it was enough for Missouri to get up on Georgia and to just kind of play keep away and then have just enough explosive plays to, kick a field goal or whatever they needed to do to kind of counteract what Georgia was doing. So that was definitely something I saw in the game. I agree with you. I think this probably drops Georgia um, when you're power rating between them and Alabama and Ohio State, probably drop them to 3. If I'm rating it myself, maybe even below Michigan. I'm not sure. I'll have to go back and look at everything to understand what happened. But I do think that we might look back at this game and be like, well, that's just kind of a weird game because Georgia is on that trajectory with Alabama where you're just week in, week out, you're going to get everybody's best shot. So I think that Georgia got Missouri's best shot. I think that there's probably some stuff that Missouri had that they hadn't been necessarily maybe deploying, that they were waiting for this game. And then you had some guys who have real chips on their shoulders. So, Luther Burden, he was down to Georgia and Missouri in the recruiting. He ends up going to Missouri. He's a 5-star. He popped off, had a few big plays, and same defensively with Rakeshaw. He had a good game. Anyways, these guys, I think that Missouri is a solid team overall, but yeah, this does raise questions for Georgia. I'm not going to raise the flag yet and say that I'm like very concerned. I think if they played this kind of game against maybe Tennessee, you're looking at a loss potentially. Um, Maybe Florida on the right day. Is this a question of Georgia playing down to the competition, or is it they had certain guys hurt, didn't have the right rhythm? It was confusing to say the least.
You mentioned the drives. I just pulled the drive chart for Georgia. Uh, punt, fumble, punt, fumble were your first 5 drives, and then scored in their next 6. Now the downside of that was the first 4 field goals. Like they kept getting the red zone and they couldn't punch it in.
Right.
Going back to that line of scrimmage, and they scored touchdowns in the last 2 drives. So Georgia escapes. And hey, solid variable guys, win your clunkers. Georgia won their clunker, and this one's close. So Georgia not unbeatable. Let's start at the beginning of the day, Daniel. Another game we talked about on our preview episode, Kentucky and Ole Miss. Ole Miss tops Kentucky 22-19. Man, this deserved to cover. This really deserved to cover. Almost the better team all game. You and I both laid the points with Ole Miss. Uh, I think if you watch this game and look at the score, it's like Ole Miss had a couple of possessions where they just made mistakes and gave Kentucky a short field because, I mean, the stats look pretty even. But like watching this game, Daniel, to me it was like I had no doubt Ole Miss is going to win the entire game. And like the better team is Ole Miss, and they're at least a touchdown better. Is that how you felt watching it?
Yeah, and it was funny because just how the day went, and this score not being a very high score, just being 20 something to 19 something, it was like 22-19. I'm like, at one point I remember looking up and be like, oh man, there's only like 3 minutes left in this game. It just kind of felt like Ole Miss at times was toying with Kentucky, but yeah, really able to run the ball well, effectively. That's something that, it's funny because going into this year, Jacob, we talked about their running backs with obviously Zach Evans, who is the all everything transfer from TCU, but then my guy, Ulysses Bentley, from SMU. I was like, okay, yeah, they got a two-headed monster. Come to find out, they got a freshman who's better than all of them in Judkins. He came in and he had over 100 yards today, and a touchdown. And that was he's a one of those guys that you can just tell he's a star. He's ready for being an all SEC back, that kind of thing. Jackson Dart had a few throws where it looked like, okay, he's ready to take that next step as a big time SEC quarterback. Obviously, the interception kind of slowed things down for him. Will Levis on the other side just did not have a good day. I felt like he was all over the place as far as his accuracy. I feel like there's been times where maybe his receivers have bailed him out because they've been such a good receiving corps so far this year. Maybe he's gotten that away with a little bit. I did kind of think early on, though, when Chris Rodriguez ran in for that touchdown, I was like, okay, maybe this is the difference. Maybe they just needed this. And then they kind of had a clunky performance the whole game, and it's tough to discern necessarily if Kentucky was just having a bad offensive day, which is kind of what I think, or if Ole Miss all of a sudden is a good defense. I think it's probably somewhere in between. Ole Miss played their best game defensively that they've played in a while, and Ole Miss isn't quite unstoppable offensively. So I think it's somewhere in there, and then vice versa. Kentucky, solid defensive day, holding an Ole Miss team to 22 points, but it wasn't enough. So I'm impressed with Ole Miss though. But this game at home, they had to win it, and they at least had an opportunity to lose it right there at the end with Kentucky with the ball in the red zone, and then they come up with a big play, strip sack, fumble recovery to get this one in the W column.
Yeah, I laughed at Lane Kiffin after the game. Did you hear what he said about their defensive performance?
I don't know. I didn't
He
hear it. I think I
said
switched it.
you got to be pretty impressed with their defense holding the #1 pick to 19 points. So
He's always trolling. I love it.
Oh, I was laughing so
Lane
hard.
remains undefeated. That's awesome.
Another ranked unranked matchup. Had the wrong one. Sorry. Oklahoma State, Baylor. So I've come to apologize.
Yes.
Oklahoma State 36, Baylor 25. I said that Oklahoma State is who we thought they were. Don't let them fool you. Returning production, all that stuff. Now, to be fair, Baylor outgained Oklahoma State by over 100 yards. Baylor had not more first downs, but I did think that Blake Shapen would light them up passing the ball. He threw for 345. To be fair, respectfully.
Respectfully, I was right, and you all can. Yeah, no.
Oklahoma State won by 11. So I thought this would be the reckoning. Turns out, top 10 Oklahoma State is just going to continue.
They're gonna be like top 5 next week or something. So
we'll see if maybe they'll jump Georgia, based on their performance.
you did this, Jacob. You did it with Oklahoma State.
Their schedule, I'm just looking at their schedule, Daniel. See, but watching Oklahoma State, I'm still not like,
blown away.
They're the best team in the Big 12. Like, they could lose their next 4 games. They could lose the next 5 games. Texas Tech, TCU, Texas, Kansas State, Kansas. You're going to sit here and tell me Kansas can't beat Oklahoma State?
Dude, first of all, we need to transition because the Big 12 keeps it moving like that. I want to ask who is the best team in the Big 12, but instead of asking that, let's talk about Oklahoma TCU. Because the best team in the Big 12 is not Oklahoma. That is my answer.
There's an answer.
Not Oklahoma. So a couple big takeaways from this game, Jacob. Obviously, TCU Max Duggan, like, he was all everything. He had over 100 rushing yards. He had 300 passing yards. He just did it all. He was awesome. This is the Max Duggan game. I think we can call it that, right? Phenomenal. So, yes, TCU won. I think it's an 8-game winning streak or 8-game losing streak they snapped, which is great. They were one of the teams that had played both Texas and Oklahoma well. If you look at like their stats, advanced stats, all that kind of stuff, they had been close with both of those teams each of the past like several years. So it's one of those where it was like, why can't they break through? Of course, it's Gary Patterson's fault. Got rid of him. Sonny Dykes comes in, beats them. Now let's turn the attention to Oklahoma. Oklahoma, Jacob. Maybe I undervalued the coaching job that Big Game Bob Stoops was doing, and then head straight into the Lincoln years of it's hard to win at that clip with any team, and Lincoln Riley did it pretty consistently. And then he leaves town, and nothing against Venables. What I'm looking at with Venables is this is a first-year head coach. He's been a long-time coach, long-time coordinator, first-time head coach. He's going to have his bumps and bruises this year, and then next year I'm going to evaluate him harshly because next year he should have it all shaped up because it's Oklahoma. Now, that being said, I think I got to give some credit to Lincoln Riley after watching Oklahoma this year. I know that they've lost to Kansas State, under Riley as well and everything like that. But, it's one of these where I think we've taken Oklahoma for granted for a few years. And now it's starting to realize that there is a whole other Big 12 outside of just Oklahoma. So.
I was told that Lincoln Riley was the reason Oklahoma's defense was bad and that Brent Venables was going to make an immediate impact on the defense. 668 yards. TCU can name their score.
You were lied to.
The Oklahoma defense improved every year under Alex Grinch. I stand by that. So, sorry, Oklahoma fans. Best team in the Big 12, not Oklahoma. You know who I do think it is? And I really do believe this. Can
Baylor?
I put a caveat?
Yeah, Baylor.
Can I put a caveat? No.
Yeah.
Is Quinn Ewers healthy?
That's a great question.
Quinn Ewers is healthy. I think Texas is the best team in the Big 12.
They looked good today. Took care of West Virginia kind of in dominant fashion, which you can't just overlook that for a team like Texas who's been struggling to get back to relevancy, to dominate a team like West Virginia. That was impressive. Kansas and Kansas State for me, I'm just going to be keeping eyes on both of them all year.
What is Kansas's final record? Do you think going to be? They're 5-0 right now.
Yeah, I mean, if I said 6-6, they'd be really mad.
So I'm pulling up their schedule. They have TCU next Saturday, and game day will be there. That's amazing. First time ever in Lawrence. Undefeated Kansas, undefeated TCU.
Rock chalk.
That's fun. Then they got Oklahoma, which.
You mean Choklahoma? Yeah.
Then they got Baylor. I mean, it gets real tough.
Yeah.
Oklahoma State, Texas Tech, Texas, Kansas State. I mean,
so
they could lose 7 straight.
6-6 is a good. Now, here's the thing, though, Jacob. If they
7-5.
I was going to say, if they go 7-5, 8-4, phenomenal. It's already a phenomenal year right now. 5 wins. Jacob, you and I think both had them at 2 or 3. We had them low because I think
Bad.
we
They'll be
said,
on our "We Were Wrong" episode at the end of the
yeah.
season.
We'll definitely take our medicine there. If we were wrong, but everybody's wrong. So, we'll all take our medicine together. I choose to also just be excited for them because, how fun to finally have a football team to cheer for since the I don't know, 2005 Orange Bowl. When were they with
2007 was the year that they lost, like last week of the season, and didn't go to the Natty. 2009 was the last like winning season or something like that.
It's been a while. Anyways, they their fans deserve this. All the crap that they take all these years. So that's exciting. I will say, 6-6 is not, nothing. All right. You're 5-0 now. Yeah, it would suck to go 1-6 over the last 7 games, but go to a bowl game this year. All right. Go to a bowl game. Um, I'm glad that game day is going next week. Maybe they catch TCU off a high because they just beat Oklahoma and they steal one from them as well. Maybe Kansas is just a really good team that we're not ready for that yet. I don't know. We'll see. We'll see. But I do, I'm very excited for them. And that will be a lot of fun to watch them kind of run, the Big 12 gauntlet, as like you were saying, these are more tough games that they're going to be playing coming up. And so we'll see if they can hang.
Love it. Bama,
Yes.
Alabama, Arkansas ranked matchup. Bama wins. Bama dominates. They pull away. They looked dominant early. Storyline from this game is going to be Bryce Young goes down with an injury, shoulder injury. How serious is it? How long will he be out? They say like a strain. I feel like they use strain a lot. We don't really know what it is yet. But Jalen Milroe, hey, credit to Alabama. The starting quarterback goes down. He was 4 of 9 passing, but he ran the ball 6 times for 91 yards, had a 77-yard run that kind of put it away. Momentum had really swung in Arkansas's favor. 3rd and 15. Arkansas had the chance to get the ball back to go. Was that what at that point? Were they within a score? When he scored in that one, it was. Sorry, I'm looking.
When who scored?
Sorry.
Arkansas kicked the onside kick, went down and scored a touchdown, and then failed the 2-point conversion. They were down 5.
Milroe. When Milroe scored on 3rd and 15.
I don't know. I don't have the drive chart in front of me.
Sorry, I'm looking at it and it's not making sense.
Okay. Well,
anyway, I was saying that changed the game. So that was just an incredible performance from Alabama. Credit to Arkansas for the comeback. I mean, this game was 28-0 at one point, and they got within 1 score. And so, great game, but Bama, that's what championship teams do. Starting QB goes down, you still win by 23. So, finally was dominant on the road. And again, I'll take my medicine there. I was wrong there about Alabama.
Well, and this is something that we'll kind of have to dissect because, yeah, they got up early, and then the injury happens, and then Arkansas was already kind of making their way back. Arkansas, credit to them for not quitting and making this a game, and then the injury, it forced Alabama to like change what they were doing because obviously, when Bryce Young's in there, yeah, you can run him around a little bit. It's more him running for his life when he's getting chased out of the pocket, but he's making these great throws on the run, and he's, leading receivers, doing all this kind of thing. Jalen Milroe is a different cat. He runs the ball really well. Obviously, you went through the stats. He had, crazy yards per carry over, he's at 91 rushing yards. So that adds a different dynamic. What it did, though, was it forced the team, I think, this may help them in the long run, regardless of the injury. If Bryce Young's back next week, or if he's back later in the year, or if he's not back at all, whatever that is, I think this team had to kind of depend on itself and realize we can't let Bryce keep bailing us out. I think you also kind of saw some of the offensive line start to assert itself and realize we can run the ball. We are a good offensive line. And I think specifically they're better at run blocking than pass blocking. I think that's why sometimes people will say, oh, yeah, their offensive line stinks just because they gave up some sacks, but you're not looking at their yards per rush, that kind of thing. Obviously, Jahmyr Gibbs over 200 yards today. This was a big, big rushing day, and most of that happened after the injury. So you have a quarterback that can run the ball and is looking to run the ball. I think it caused some strain on the defense. And so when they're trying to cover Jalen Milroe, then all of a sudden you have dynamic Jahmyr Gibbs running right through a gap and, busting up a big, long touchdown run. That's something that we're going to have to see, if there's going to be, fruit to this going forward, if this is going to be something that they're, because next week they have Texas A&M, which is going to be a stout defense potentially. And then, we'll still fade them. We'll go on our principle. We're fading them regardless, but it'll be a stout, challenging defense. And then they play Tennessee after that. So we will see this manifest itself over the next couple of weeks. Hopefully Bryce is okay. And that's just like a, very short-term injury. Obviously you never like to see anybody go down, anything like that. You do have to wonder though, Jacob, does this, because let's for instance just say Bryce is out for a month, just playing the game of what they're going to do at quarterback. Obviously they won the game with Milroe. They ran the ball extremely well with Milroe. I would be concerned if I'm counting on him to pass the ball a lot, like a high volume. I do think that they can usually just outmuscle teams, but you play a team like Tennessee in 2 weeks. Tennessee's going to be throwing the ball a lot. I know the better passer potentially is Ty Simpson, but are you going to go to a true freshman in lieu of your redshirt freshman who can run the offense for his passing ability? Or are you just going to try to game plan around running the ball and, having some quick, easy passes that, Milroe can get going? Not saying he's incapable. I hate to paint that picture, but, it may just not be his best attribute.
I think given time to prep, you go with Milroe. He's your QB2. There's a reason he played when Bryce went down today. And given time to prep, I think he can game plan to build the offense around his skill set. I have confidence in Alabama under Milroe, like even if Bryce misses a few games.
And I think you and I have both said that at different times that their best two players outside of Bryce Young are both backs. Like Jace McClellan is a great running back. And then obviously
on offense,
Jahmyr yeah. Sorry. Sorry. Offensively,
few
their
names
best
on
two
defense.
players. Yeah. No, they got some dudes. But you go up and down the offensive line and receivers and tight ends and stuff. They're not on par with what you've got in the backfield with Jahmyr Gibbs and Jace McClellan. So, maybe Milroe unlocks a little something for Alabama. Like I said, that strain on the defense when a quarterback run. Nobody likes that. Nobody likes a running quarterback. You want to get them on the ground, and especially if they're going to be running some, RPO read option stuff. I think Jahmyr Gibbs is licking his chops right now after what he just did today to Arkansas's defense, and that's a pretty good front seven. So that's something to keep in mind.
Absolutely. All right, Bama, covered them. A&M, just fade A&M, 42-24.
Keep fading them. Mike Leach, Will Rogers.
Keep making money. They'll be big dogs at Bama next week. Don't fear it. Play the points.
Also think about this. LSU dominated Mississippi State last week, my 10-2 LSU Tigers. And so Mississippi State, then, of course, transitive property always works. So Mississippi State dominates Texas A&M. So, LSU is going to beat A&M by like 3 scores by the end of the year. That was one of the losses that I had going. So that Florida State loss really doesn't look so bad for my 10-2 LSU Tigers. So we're going 10-2 still. So anyways.
They get down 17-0, win the game 21-17.
I was impressed with Robbie Ashford today. they got up early, and obviously it looked more like, human the rest of the game, but maybe he was, a little more explosive, and maybe he's a little more SEC ready than maybe I had anticipated this season. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, you're good. Um, Impressed with LSU's comeback performance. I was going to say, is Harsin the coach tomorrow?
Yes, and here's why, Jacob. Listen to Chuck Oliver's show. He is a big Auburn fan. Obviously, he went there. Apparently, he knows some guys that are in on the program, and there's a thought that they don't want to fire Harsin until later in the season because they'll fire him whenever they need to fire him. But it's almost like they want him to take his medicine, by, oh yeah, you go play Georgia and get, skull dragged, which after this week, I don't know if that's the case. You go play Alabama. Like, it's almost like they want him to go play these big games and pick up these losses. I'll say this, that's a dangerous game to play because what if your guy goes and picks up a
Goes 11
win
and 1.
in Athens or goes into this? If these boosters are playing that game, I do think he stays the head coach for now.
I hope he wins out.
Yeah.
That would be the best. Here's the thing.
They would implode.
You and I said when they hired Harsin, bad hire. We were mad they fired Gus. Still stand by that. That being said, Auburn's done him dirty.
Oh yeah.
So I'm rooting for
They're
him.
sabotaging
I think it was a bad hire. I don't think he's a good coach, but I hope they go 11 and 1. I am rooting for Brian Harsin and Auburn this year.
Well, no, that was their second loss. So.
Oh yeah, sorry, 10-2. Forgot they lost. So 10-2 Auburn. Purdue beats Minnesota 20-10. Minnesota, everyone thought like, all right, this is the best team in the Big Ten West. Everyone in the Big Ten West is 1-1 except for Nebraska, who's 0-2. So, do you want the division? Do you want to win the Big Ten West, Daniel? Because you too can put your name in the hat in the Big Ten West.
Yeah, this is, I think, just another feather in the cap of potentially just doing away with divisions for the Big Ten as well, because the Big Ten East, really we should see. There's 4 teams in the Big Ten East that you're just like, okay, these teams, like, they are far and away above everybody in the Big Ten West. So I think that'll be something that happens soon.
Last game I had on here was Friday night. This was on my best bets. UCLA beats Washington 40-32. So Washington was ranked 15th. UCLA is undefeated. So most likely thing is UCLA jumps to 15, right? That's how it works.
Yeah.
From unranked to 15. But really impressed with DTR. Offense runs through him. You can tell he's in his 16th year in Chip Kelly's system.
Yeah.
And great performance. Michael Penix still looked good, but had a little bit of that YOLO ball in him as well. But big win for UCLA. Pac-12 South looking like the strongest division like we thought it might, or formal division. Any of the games you wanted to hit, Daniel? We got a couple live right now.
Yeah, I mentioned Georgia Tech Pitt. I did want to, obviously give them a shout out. Very impressed. Pitt obviously closed the gap late with a couple of late meaningless scores. Tech was up and then was just kind of, this is a game that I have family that's Georgia Tech fans. I told them, hey, this is what you can tell is, what kind of talent is still on this team by how they play the rest of the year. And if they're bought in, if, with after Jeff Collins getting fired, if they're going to quit or if they're going to play, I was like, you'll know in 1 week, because Pitt is one of those teams that plays tough and they're just a tough out. You don't go in there and just push them around. And Tech, for all intents and purposes, it was a rock fight for most of the game, but they won the game. And that's something they haven't been doing. And so I'm curious to see if they can win a couple games down the stretch we joked, I don't know if it was necessarily jokes, but, the whole, Deion Sanders and these guys coming in, what if they just rolled with the interim guy, Brent Key, being a Georgia Tech alum? He wins a couple games, kind of no nonsense kind of guy, has coached under Nick Saban. What if that's the call at the end of the season to maybe get some, continuity? I don't know. Anyways, good one for the Jackets in Pittsburgh tonight.
Shout out to Tom Fernelli. Once again, the Service Academy under hit. It was a nervous first quarter with 10 points scored, but 23 total points below that total of 38. Shout out to Service Academy unders.
23 points.
USC is up 21-17 against Arizona State in the third quarter. Arizona State driving for what it's worth.
Wow.
So if you listen to this podcast on Sunday, you know the result, but we don't yet. So we're going to go watch.
That's right.
You can follow us on social media at the Extra Point Pod. You can follow him on Twitter at Deep South Daniel. You can follow me on Twitter at Jacob Carnes with a K. And that will do it for this edition of the Extra Point. He is
Go Braves.
I am Jacob. Go Braves. See you.